I get this awful feeling that I'm leaving some of the most dramatic major things out right now as I come, and really the closer we come to the present, the more that's true. Well, you know, with time, it'll sort out, and some of the things that we now think are so important will be forgotten, and others won't go away. This is my 179th day, first video. I guess there'll be two. One more day to go. I'll have more to say to that about that, I guess, here at the end. But looking back at what I said, Of Mice and Men deserves to be mentioned. In 1930s, John Steinbeck, I think, wrote that. I have not read it. I'm not proud of that. But I'm not so much a reader of fiction anymore, but I felt really that I need to mention that. There are many very, very respected writers and books of the 20th century that I just can't speak to them. Charlie Chaplin, I say his coin sequence, you know, in the Great Dictator. Well, one of the things that goes on now is approaching the end of the year, the school year. You know, what do you do with the students? They're getting so excited and you know, always trying to show them a good time if I could. Well, one of the things I like to show in The Great Dictator, if I had time, was a sequence toward the end where a coin has been hidden in a pudding to determine who it is that's going to do a suicide attempt on the life of Adenoid Hinkle. And anyway, I like to show kids that sequence because there's nothing said. You know, it's a sound movie, The Great Dictator, but there you see Charlie Chaplin acting a little, well, so much like he did in the silent movies. It would take some work, I suppose, to find that, but it is pretty funny to see him in action there. Mahatma Gandhi. There are some years I don't mention him, and I feel so terrible about that. He's huge. He managed to get India independent from Britain without fighting a war. He actually put his effort off for a while during World War II. Mahatma Gandhi, what an inspiration of a man. And yet, you know, it points to the fact that this course, all year, it has been prejudiced or biased toward the Western world. You know, I couldn't really fix that without having to just change the whole course or do another course. But anyway, Mahatma Gandhi, in the 40s, man, he influenced me. He's influenced many. Two women that I thought of. You know, I thought a little bit about starting today's video off by saying, I like women, which would be maybe a stupid thing to say, but there are two women that come to my mind out of the 1930s and 40s, well, longer than that now, that I never met them. They're both dead now. I didn't even find out about them until later on. But I want to mention them to you, not so much that they are classic, but even though they're dead and gone, their work kind of remains. One of them is a German woman named Leni Riefenstahl. Her career is worth following. She was a dancer. She was an actress. But then she became the filmmaker for the Nazis, for their propaganda, and that's what she's best known for. But then she lived past that, and she went on. She lived to be over 100 years old. I think she was one of the oldest women scuba divers ever. A truly fascinating woman. A woman that, you know, I wish I could have met, I think. And another one in that same light is a dancer named Sid Charisse. 1940s, you know, I mentioned movie musicals, and of all the dances that I've seen in those black and white and then color, the one that I just found myself thinking of was Sid Charisse dancing with Fred Astaire in a movie called Bandwagon, and I guess the name of the song is Dancing in the Dark. It's like in Central Park, but it's just such an example of beauty. So anyway, this is, I don't mean to claim that they deserve to be right up there with the major classics, but you know, the closer we get to the present, the more you're going to be getting my personal take on things, and those are two women that strike me as being worth your knowing about them. All right, anyway, we go on to the 1950s. I feel like I can't deal with the 50s this quickly, but I guess I will. In the 1950s, television was invented. I remember, I'm old enough that I remember the first television that we ever had. It was black and white, and it was a real big deal. And those early black and white television shows, they right to this day, I should have put in here quiz shows. There were so many quiz shows. There's a genre that doesn't go away. If you see if you watch television, you see a black and white show, you're probably watching something out of the 50s. Sitcoms. I Love Lucy is the one that kids, they seem to all know about it. You know, it makes me think it hasn't gone away. People still like that. I Love Lucy, The Honeymooners. It was the Ed Sullivan Show. An awful lot of people who later on became very, very, very famous. The Beatles, for example. Most Americans first saw them on the Ed Sullivan Show. And then there were those westerns. There were so many westerns in the 1950s. And you know, the news, I mean the evening news, there's where it began to become standard that in the evening you would watch the news. And the other thing that I think of in the 1950s, I mean, I'm sure, well, there are some major movies, you know, all those movies about horror monsters and stuff, but early rock and roll. Rock and roll was, we got it from the blacks. It was called rhythm and blues, and a lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that in the 1950s. I thought it was music of white kids. Well, it was because they embraced it. But anyway, when the white kids got a hold of rock and roll, or that music, they ended up calling it rock and roll. And boy, what a classic! It is so valued. I mean, of those very early rock and roll artists, my favorite is Chuck Berry. Elvis Presley. I mean, he swept the nation. He became so popular, Elvis Presley. I think when he was on the Ed Sullivan Show, they made sure that the camera couldn't see him from the waist down because the way I'm sure of this, the way he moved his hips around, that was kind of scandalous. He was also called the white man with the black sound or something like that. You know, with the students, I used to say, all right, kids, fill in the blank. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and they'd all shout out rock. You know, don't step on my, and they'd all shout out blue suede shoes, or goodness gracious, great, and the kids would all shout out balls of fire. As proof, you know, I would do that as proof that these were, you ain't nothing but a, and they'd all shout out hound dog. Proof that these are classics. They haven't gone away. They're 50 years old. The kids know them just like that. My Chubby Checker, the twist, you know, and there's Bo Diddley. There's lots of other ones too. I think I maybe was a nerd in the 1950s because I listened to it. I tried to relate to that music. I forced myself to try to relate to it, but I had trouble relating to it. As I think I said earlier, I already knew about Bach and Mozart, and you know, so I'll confess to being a nerd about that. But there's no doubt that it didn't go away, and if you haven't seen it already, I hope you see. I hope at some point you see the video that I posted from Germany with Tom Hockling and taking a lead and singing. I guess if that would be called. My baby bought a ticket on the latest train. I mean, that was 12-bar blues. It belongs in here because that's part of the 50s. All right, I'm going to go on to the 60s today still.